If you get into one of my cars, you get in the win.
Do you feel that Enzo Ferrari was happier during his racer days?
Sure.
I'm asking because of the opening, when basically he's having such a great time, and that's the picture that is not coming back really in the rest of the movie. I would like to start with this process of peeling down the layers of this character, because you have your costume, you have your really strong body language and accent and so on, so on. And I was wondering if there's a moment that you have to like punch through to the essence, to the core of this character, and what was that core, that essence for you?
The mindset of a racer was the thing that we hung our hat on the most. There was this thing, we raced cars before we started, and I feel like you kind of had to do that to understand what it meant to have such a prolonged focus and an acute attention to detail, because a mistake meant your car would go off the road or you would lose time. And when you're in the thick of that, when you're driving, you have no room for anything else external to kind of distract you from that. And it's not chaotic, it's the opposite, it's hyper-focused. You mentioning it starting that way, I think that's why Michael starts the movie that way. It's just a reminder that before everything in life, he was a racer first, you know, and when everything is going, when shit is hitting the fan and his wife is finding out about his Lena Lardy and his business is going under because of his obsession with racing, that he has to maintain this, you know, totally myopic focus on what he's trying to do, which is build the fastest car.
Did you feel that he's like yet another of Michael Mann's characters, that they're basically sacrificing everything on this altar of passion or of mission? Like did you feel that he made Enzo Ferrari his own guy in a way?
He made Enzo three-dimensional, and yes, they have similar characteristics. You know, Michael is definitely relentless. There are things, nothing in films are designed to help you make your movie. If anything, everything is set up to not help you make your movie, and Michael kind of wills things into existence, for sure. Yeah, and that's most films, though. Most films are their directors, you know, especially if they've written it and directing it. So they're always, in my mind, a good source of, even abstractly, a good source of inspiration for who the character is.
Is he a tough guy, like strict by the numbers, or?
Who, Michael?
Yeah.
Well, much is made about how well-researched he is, and he definitely suffers no fools and is entirely prepared. But Michael is very interested in the abstract. He puts all of these elements together. He's on a big quest for authenticity because he feels that intangible matters in film. And I agree. But what we're talking about is something that's elusive. It's not you know, it's a feeling that he's after. So even though he is an incredible technician, all of his acting notes are centered around internal life, which again is a really abstract idea. And then he hopes that all of those elements combine into something that is that goes beyond what is written on the page or whatever the sound quality of a shot is, you know, or a scene is.
Did you think at any point, because Enzo Ferrari has this great, strong screen presence. I mean, in terms of body language, the way he moves, the way he talks, the way you talk, you move basically. Did at any point you thought to yourself, okay, there is a risk of mimicry?
Well, again, because it was internal, mostly, I didn't have a problem with trying to dig deeper. And externally, I feel like everything's solved when your internal life is strong. He is someone who was calm, or our version at least, is someone who's calm on the surface, but has an engine going on underneath. So as long as I thought about that, I thought the external part would take care of himself. But there is, of course, an external part, you know, image. I'm wearing prosthetics, I'm wearing makeup. There's like, you're limited in a sense. But the minute those things start getting in your way, I feel like they're not helpful anyway.
Yeah, I love these two scenes. They're next to each other, basically, with Enzo and his wife paying respects to their late son. Mm-hmm. I mean, and this contrast of like really casual chatter and this painful silence, basically. I was wondering how you and Penelope Cruz, how you're building this kind of contrast on screen's dynamic.
We didn't talk about that at all. She did her scenes, I wasn't there for it, and I did my scene and she wasn't there for it. Michael really wanted that scene to be a person who was talking not to his son, but almost to a friend. Like you see him almost at his most stripped away. There's only 2 times where we talked about him being most at ease, and that's with Lena Lardi, and when he was in the mausoleum with Dino. That it didn't feel any of the professions that he's making in the other scenes. It didn't feel grand. It had to be just like you and I were talking, as if it was like, but even more intimate than that. That it had to be someone who is a good friend that he's talking to. So that was, and then whatever he did with Penelope, Michael shaped that. But that was what we talked about.
Yeah, because I was wondering during the screening, what was basically the driving force of this character? Was this a grief, or maybe more maybe obsession?
There's lots of different things in different scenes. Sometimes it's grief, sometimes it's competition, sometimes it's love. It's not one thing. Grief is certainly a big part of it. If grief is something that resonated for you, that's great. I don't have a definitive answer about there was just this one thing that I thought about. It's different for every person that he interacted with in the movie.
And how is it in acting? Do you feel that some kind of mix of negative and positive emotions is something that can be a driving force, or are you able to cut yourself completely off and be this blank slate when you're going to the next project, to the next movie?
Sure. I mean, if by negative emotions you mean fear or insecurity, then absolutely. Mad. I don't even have a problem with people being mad so long as it's constructive. That's all of it. That's making anything. As far as moving on to the next job, I always like moving on to the next job, even if I like the job. I want it to be over as soon as possible. The best part about an acting job for me is the first couple hours when everyone gets together and we all agree that we should make the movie. Then it lasts for a couple hours, and then I personally, it's peaks and valleys. It's not all one thing. There's days I love being on set, and it all works, and there's days when it's more of a struggle. So, but then as soon as it comes time for it to be over, I want it out of my life almost as soon as possible, and then move on to something else.
And is it easy to have this out of your life?
It's easier if you have something else to focus on, and I find it easier because I have a family, so I have 2 kids, and they kind of force you, and a dog, and a hamster that I hate, and a wife, and not in that order, obviously, but the hamster would be last because it's a terrible animal to have. But they kind of force you out of your head. You can't really live with that stuff very long.
Yeah, so about these jobs, because you played original characters, you build the ground up. You played characters of some significant historical importance, and the ones that were in the established pop cultural franchise that is beloved. Which kind of character was the most challenging for you from these 3?
In all of the things that I've done?
Yeah, which type of pre-existing or?
It's challenging when it's it's hard. I mean, the ones that I find is not really the character so much, it's how they're made. When it's a big studio movie, I still have faith in big studio movies, but often they are the most difficult because it's more people involved who shouldn't be involved. And the obstacles are just more with bigger things because people try to make them I feel like bigger budget movies really miss the idea that actually the more specific it is, the more universal it is. I think their mindset is the more universal it is, the more money we'll make. And so that to me has been the toughest challenge. But as far as ranking existing characters and non-existing ones, they're challenging in different ways. I feel like existing characters, they give you the opportunity to behave in a way that you wouldn't, and you have strict parameters. And it's more, in a way, more freeing because it limits your choices. So then sometimes characters that you're developing, it can be a trick to just rely on your habits. And you don't want to do that. You still want to try to build someone from the ground up. I try to think of it even as film, as theater. So I'm just trying to think of it, how does it affect my whole body? I'm boring myself with pretentious shit, but they're not one or the other. You know, they're all challenging. I find the processes when it almost seems like, you know, the more people involved, the less fun it is. You know, when it's like a core group of people and it's like someone's leading it and they know what they're doing and they're all in it for the sake of the film, it's awesome. And I don't care if it's a pre-existing person, Italian, not Italian, anything. I'll do that.
There are lots of Italians. Thank you very much.
Two Italians, two. And I swear I'll never do it.
How is to eat.
I know, yeah. Everyone has to come up with a thing, but it's only two.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. How do you say action in Polish?
Akcja.
Akcja?
Akcja.
Are you saying it with a K?
Yeah.
Akcja?
Akcja.
Akcja. Akcja.
Akcja.
Akcja.